I felt the impact before I even saw his face. A jolt, a shoulder bump, the quick shuffle of someone trying to steady a paper cup brimming with hot coffee. I had twisted to avoid it in instinct from years of navigating crowded warehouses, and my sleeve brushed against Bradley Patterson Jr. as the elevator doors slid open. He stared at me like I had deliberately targeted him. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "I was just trying not to get burned," I said, keeping my tone even. "No harm done." He stepped closer, lowering his voice, but not his arrogance. "If it were not for my father, you would still be cleaning trash in the freight yard." The words hit harder than the bump ever could. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I refused to let it show. I had worked for Anchorline Logistics since long before he learned to spell the word logistics. I stepped out of the elevator, letting the insult slide off me like it belonged to someone else. That should have been the end of it. Just a spoiled executive bruising his own ego. But 5 minutes later, he pushed open the conference room door where I was reviewing vendor adjustments and marched inside with a self-satisfied smirk. "Daisy Harwood," he announced, reading from a sheet of paper as if it granted him authority. "Effective immediately. Your employment with Anchorline Logistics is terminated. Security will escort you out." My team froze. Someone inhaled sharply. Bradley Jr. did not look at me. He looked through me, the way people look through a ghost. I rose slowly, smoothing the front of my jacket. "Are you sure about that?" I asked. His smile twitched, but he nodded anyway, pretending not to hear the slight tremor in his own breathing. I walked out without raising my voice, without giving him the satisfaction of a scene. My pulse stayed steady as I reached the lobby. I stepped outside, took out my phone, and called Jonathan Price, my attorney of 19 years. "It is time," I told him. "Activate Section 12B. I want an emergency board meeting in 3 hours." Jonathan exhaled sharply. "Understood." I ended the call, calm as ever, because I already knew what Bradley Jr. did not. I walked away from the building without hurrying, the cool air settling around me like it understood more than the people inside ever had. A few employees stood near the entrance, whispering the way people do when they think a fall from grace is happening right in front of them. None of them knew the truth. To them, I had always been middle management at best, a woman who worked hard, never complained, and stayed out of office politics. One of the younger analysts, Megan, called out softly, "Daisy, are you okay?" "I will be." I said, "Get back inside." "You have a report due." She hesitated but followed the instruction. Most people did. They just never asked themselves why. As I reached the parking garage, my phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan. "Documents retrieved. Meeting confirmed. Efficient, as always." He knew I kept every paper, contract, and side agreement in triplicate 1 copy in my home office, 1 in a secured private vault, and 1 with him. I had started doing that more than 20 years ago, back when Anchorline was nothing more than 3 desks and a temperamental fax machine. Back then, Bradley Sr. had offered me my first promotion. "Assistant Director of Operations," he said proudly. "Corner office someday." I remembered looking him straight in the eye. "I want 0.5% instead." He had blinked at me, confused. "You want equity instead of a title. I want something that grows." I told him. He laughed, thinking it was charming. But he signed the papers. I asked for another 0.5% 2 years later instead of a holiday bonus. Another % instead of a retention package when our competitor tried to poach me. Little pieces, small numbers, nothing anyone would fight over at the time. They thought I was collecting scraps. They never realized scraps compound. I reached my car, unlocked the door, and placed my phone on the seat beside me. My hands were steady, my breathing even. They had seen a woman fired today. They had not yet seen the woman who had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. Jonathan answered on the first ring. He never did that unless something was already in motion. "I reviewed the documents you stored with me," he said. "Section 12B is still active, completely enforceable." I leaned back in the driver's seat. "Good." I want it executed exactly as written." He paused, choosing his words. "You know that clause was never meant to be used lightly." "I remember why we created it," I said. 13 years ago, 2 days after the warehouse walkout, Jonathan let out a low breath. When that junior cousin tried to fire half the staff during his so-called budget purge, he had zero authority. I said, "But he caused enough damage that investors begged for a safeguard." "And you wrote one," Jonathan replied. "A rule strong enough to override impulsive leadership." I heard him flipping through pages. Per Section 12B. If a non-equity appointee initiates the termination of any founding team member without a formal board vote, all interim authority transfers immediately to the majority shareholder. I closed my eyes for a moment. Then there is no ambiguity. "None," he confirmed. "Bradley Jr. holds zero equity. You were a founding team member, and he cleared his throat, you hold 72% of the company." Hearing the number said aloud steadied something inside me. Not pride, certainty. Years of quiet decisions had led to this. "So he fired the one person he legally cannot touch," Jonathan added. "It is a textbook trigger. And he had no idea," I said. Jonathan's tone sharpened. "Board packets are already being delivered. By the time he finishes his victory lap, everyone above him will know what he just did." A small knock sounded on my window. It was Megan, holding out a folder I had left behind. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were worried. I thanked her gently, took the folder, and drove out of the garage, letting the weight of the moment settle not as fear, but as the quiet shift of power returning to its rightful place. I parked outside my townhouse and sat for a moment, letting the quiet settle. My mind drifted not to Bradley Jr.'s smug face, but to the years when Anchorline Logistics was nothing more than an experiment on Goose Island, buried between abandoned warehouses and rusted freight yards. Back then, we worked on 3 mismatched desks, no titles, no hierarchy. Just a founder with big ideas and a few people stubborn enough to stick around through every crisis. I was the one sent to deal with problems no one else wanted to touch. I remembered confronting a vendor who had been skimming product from incoming shipments. He slammed a clipboard on the table and shouted, "You cannot threaten me. You are not the boss." I had replied calmly, "I am the one who found your mistakes. That makes me the solution you need." He backed down. We recovered the contract. Bradley Sr. never forgot that. There were the nights I stayed past midnight performing audit after audit because a distributor accused us of underreporting. I found the errors, corrected the books, and saved us from a lawsuit that could have sunk us before we even had momentum. "Take the promotion," Bradley Sr. said after that. "Director of Compliance. I want equity instead," I told him. He signed off on 1%. Years later, during the CFO's brutal divorce, he came to me pale and shaking. "I need to liquidate 15%. Fast." I bought every share he offered. Then came the founder's lawsuit, his own brother claiming patent infringement. The board was terrified, but I negotiated a settlement that ended with another 22% falling into my hands. Jonathan once asked, "Why keep doing this? Titles are easier, cleaner. I am not here for a family dynasty," I told him. "I am here for the company." I stepped out of the car, locked the door behind me, and walked toward my front steps with the weight of decades settling into place, not as a burden, but as proof of everything I had built. Jonathan and I spent the next hour on the phone confirming timestamps, signatures, and board notifications. Every step was precise. Every document was already where it needed to be. By the time I hung up, the legal machine was fully awake. Meanwhile, across the river on the 12th floor of Anchorline, Bradley Patterson Jr. was celebrating. I knew because Megan sent me a screenshot. His LinkedIn update glowed with self-congratulation. "Modern leadership requires courage. Tough decisions define the future." Under it, a photo of him raising a glass of champagne in the executive lounge. Jonathan snorted when I forwarded it. He popped a bottle already. He truly has no idea. He thinks today was his defining moment. I said, out of habit. I checked my email. A new message had arrived from an unexpected sender, Emily Rourke, Junior's executive assistant. Her message was brief. Ms. Harwood, you should have this. Attached was a clean PDF termination memo, Daisy Harwood. I opened it. The wording was sloppy. No board approval listed, no HR notation, no legal justification. Just a signature from a man who believed authority could be borrowed. A soft ding echoed in my ear as Jonathan texted compliance flagged the memo. He triggered their alert system. Already, I said aloud. His bragging post likely pushed it. Jonathan replied, they scan everything. At that same moment, Laura from HR stood in Junior's doorway. I could picture her by the tone in her voice as she left a voicemail for me. Daisy. I tried to warn him. He told me to schedule a photographer instead. I ended the call without comment. I did not need a picture of his victory. The real photograph would come later when he discovered what that memo had unleashed. Bradley Patterson Sr. was halfway through a swing at the Lincoln Park driving range when his phone buzzed for the 6th time. He frowned, checked the screen, and saw 5 missed calls from the same office line. The 6th came from General Counsel Morrison. He answered with irritation in his voice. This better be important. Morrison did not waste breath. Your son fired Daisy Harwood this morning. There was a pause, just long enough for the sound of a golf club dropping into grass. He did what Bradley Sr. asked. Section 12B is active, Morrison said. We have a mandatory board meeting this afternoon. Another silence. Longer this time. No, Bradley Sr. said. That clause was hypothetical. A safety net. It was never, it is binding. Morrison cut in. Executed legally. Time-stamped. Distributed. We cannot undo it. Bradley Sr. exhaled sharply. Breath uneven. Why would he fire her? Daisy built that company with us. I cannot speak to his motives, Morrison replied. But the effect is immediate. What effect the founder demanded. Morrison's tone softened only slightly. Interim authority transfers to the majority shareholder. That would still be the family. Bradley Sr. insisted. No, Morrison said. It is Daisy Harwood. She holds 72%. The wind shifted on the line, carrying the sound of distant traffic. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. She never told me. She had no obligation to. Morrison replied, and your son has no authority to terminate her. Bradley Sr. left the driving range without picking up his club. He drove straight toward Chicago headquarters, still wearing golf shoes and a collared shirt, gripping the wheel tight enough to whiten his knuckles. Whatever he had believed about control, legacy, or bloodline, it had begun to unravel before he even reached the building. I reached the headquarters lobby as a courier team unloaded sealed envelopes heavy, cream-colored packets stamped with the board's insignia. Each one contained the full activation record for Section 12B. Jonathan coordinated everything from his office, sending updates as the couriers split off toward the elevators. Board member deliveries underway, he said through the phone. Every packet includes the termination memo, your equity ledger, and the full protocol. Good, I replied. No delays. As I crossed the floor, Harold Weinstein, one of our longest-serving board members, stepped out of an elevator holding his packet but not opening it yet. His eyes found mine immediately. Daisy, he said, voice low. This is fast. It had to be, I answered. He tightened his grip. You filed within hours of the incident? I filed before the incident, I said, taking out my phone. This is the time-stamped email I sent at 6:47 this morning. I told legal to prepare in case Junior attempted unauthorized restructuring. Harold stared at the screen. The early timestamp. The subject line that read, potential executive overreach, anticipating immediate action. You knew he would try something, he said quietly. I knew he would try anything. I replied, behind him, Another courier jogged past, heading toward the legal floor. A compliance officer followed, tablet in hand. She stopped at Harold's side. "Mr. Weinstein," she said, "Bradley Patterson Jr.'s public posts have been flagged. Celebratory content referencing personnel decisions violates 3 of our disclosure rules." Harold exhaled slowly, the weight of the situation settling onto his shoulders. "This is worse than I thought. It is precisely what we prepared for," I said. Jonathan's voice buzzed in my ear again. "All deliveries confirmed. The board is assembling. Everything is moving." I walked toward the elevator, leaving the lobby behind as the final pieces locked into place. 3 hours to the minute after my firing, I walked through the front doors of Anchorline again. The same security guard who had avoided my eyes that morning straightened immediately. "Ms. Harwood," he said, stepping aside. "Conference room A is ready for you." There was no confusion in his voice now, only recognition. I nodded once and continued down the hall. The air felt different, charged, unsettled. Doors were cracked open, quiet voices drifting from behind them. Word had spread. No one knew exactly what was happening, but they all sensed something was shifting beneath their feet. When I opened the door to Conference Room A, every board member was already seated. Papers lay neatly stacked in front of them, the thick packets Jonathan had prepared. No one spoke. Their expressions were sober, expectant. Harold Weinstein gestured to the seat at the far end of the table. "Daisy. We can begin once all parties are present." Before I could answer, the door flew open hard enough to rattle the glass. Bradley Patterson Jr. stormed inside, face flushed, phone clutched in his hand like a weapon. Why was I not informed about this meeting, he demanded. "I am the CEO. You were," I said evenly. "Until this morning." He spun toward me. "You do not get to say that. I am not saying it." I replied. "The documents are—" Jonathan, seated near the legal team, slid a folder across the table. Junior snatched it up, scanning the first page. His jaw tightened. Bradley Sr., seated near the window, leaned forward. His voice wavered just slightly. "Is it all legal?" The head of legal, Morrison, answered before anyone else could. Every line, valid, binding, and already activated. Junior's fingers slipped on the folder, the pages shuffling out of order as he tried to gather them. The room remained still, the weight of inevitability settling around him with every passing second. The meeting was no longer his. It had never truly been. Harold cleared his throat, folding his hands on the table. "We will proceed with the vote regarding the removal of Bradley Patterson Jr. from the position of Chief Executive Officer. This session is recorded under Section 12B Protocol." Junior shot up from his chair. "You cannot vote on my position without me present." "You are present," Harold replied, unmoved, "and we are proceeding." Junior pointed at me. "She manipulated all of you. She has been plotting this." I kept my voice steady. "I have been running this company while others played at leadership. That is all." His father looked at him, eyes strained. "Sit down, Bradley." "No," Junior snapped. "I will not let her take what belongs to my family." "It never belonged to your family," I said quietly. "Authority is not inherited. It is earned." The room stilled. Even the fluorescent hum seemed to fade. Harold lifted the first ballot, all in favor of rescinding the appointment of Bradley Patterson Jr. The head of operations raised his hand, then the lead investor representative, then Morrison, legal counsel, the CFO, another board member, and finally, Bradley Sr., his hand trembling, but raised all the same. Junior's breath hitched. "Dad, you cannot. You know I know she saved this company more times than I can count," his father said. "I know she warned you, and I know you ignored everyone who tried to help you." Harold closed the tally. "The vote is unanimous." Junior sank back into his chair, color draining from his face. "You are making a mistake," he whispered, but the fight had already left his voice. A soft knock sounded at the door. 2 compliance officers stepped inside, badges visible. "Mr. Patterson," one said, "your clearance has been revoked. We will escort you out." He stood slowly, disbelief hollowing his posture, and followed them toward the hallway in silence. This was not my walkout from earlier. This one had no smirk, no certainty, no throne to sit on. I returned to the 12th floor a few hours after the vote, not to reclaim my old corner office, but to choose a smaller room near strategic operations. The blinds looked out over the Chicago River, the same waterway our freight once depended on, long before we built distribution centers across the Midwest. The room was practical, quiet, honest. It fit me better than any title ever had. Harold stepped in first. "The staff is asking if there will be layoffs." "No," I said. "Warehouse crews stay. Routes stay. Every supplier contract stays. We stabilize first." Jonathan nodded from behind him. "I will draft the announcements. Make them simple." I replied. "People do not need speeches. They need security." By late afternoon, the board reconvened briefly to finalize one more decision. I stood at the head of the table, not out of ceremony but necessity. "I am suspending the CEO role for 6 months," I announced. "We will establish a leadership council with rotating authority. No single person should ever control this company's future without accountability." There was a murmur, then agreement. It was the right move. An hour later, Bradley Patterson Jr. stood outside the operations room, escorted by a compliance officer but no longer defiant. His voice was smaller now. "So this is it," he said. "It does not have to be." I answered. "There is an open rotation in the warehouse. 3 months on the floor. 3 months in dispatch. If you want to understand the company you claim to lead, start where it actually lives." He stared at me as if I had spoken another language. "You expect me to do manual work. I expect you to earn what you want," I said. He left without replying. Near sunset, Bradley Sr. found me adjusting a stack of route reports. He stood quietly before speaking. "Daisy, thank you," he said, "for saving what I almost let fall apart." I nodded once. No triumph, no gloating, just truth. I had not won by breaking anyone. I had won by protecting everything that mattered: my work, my people, my city, and the company built from its grit. Some authority whispers, some authority stays.